Further debate. I recognize the member from Oshawa.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and I am glad to again have the opportunity to speak on behalf of families in Oshawa and across Durham Region, especially those who are struggling emotionally in the wake of the death of their loved ones in long-term care. I have said many things in this House on the record in bringing their voices here, and I'm going to continue that today. I wanted to share the important voices of those who are living in the reality that this government is creating, as well as the reality of the pandemic, which is not of our creation, and we are all doing our best to respond accordingly. This government, however, I would say needs to do better. This bill is a huge problem, and the government knows it and can feel it. It's not just out in the media, it's all over the place with community members who recognize on its face it is not okay to make it harder for grieving families to access justice. One of those families is the family of Paul Parks, who is a gentleman that died at Orchard Villa long-term care in Pickering. His daughter, Kathy Parks, has had to become an advocate and activist, not just for her own family, but for the other grieving families and community. She writes, "Last week I spoke with the Legislative Committee about my concerns regarding Bill 218. As I stated to the committee, I feel that long-term care has no place in Bill 218. None of the reasonable measures or terms of gross neglect found in Bill 218 should be applied to long-term care. This past weekend, we had 20 deaths in long-term care alone in Ontario. We are in the second wave, and it seems we have learned very little. This year has shown that we have marginalized our vulnerable citizens to the point of death, and we have allowed it to go on too long. I would like to send you a quote that was spoken last week by a senior executive of Chartwell Homes to its investors. Quote, "The new legislation from this government mitigates the risk from lawsuits against the company and makes the threshold for proving damages very high," end quote. And she continues, Speaker, "With a statement like that, I am shocked that Bill 218 still exists." And that's from Kathy Parks of Pickering. Kathy and other families right now, Speaker, if you're following the news, are very concerned that the causes of death on death certificates may not actually reflect the actual circumstances of their death. And right now they want an investigation of all certificates and records relating to death at that home. And that's just more insult to the original injury, Speaker. This continues to be an unfolding circumstance. I want to share from a legal opinion, Bill 218, The Death of Memory, written by Marvin Zucker, who was a judge of the Ontario Court of Justice. He presided there for a long time, and he retired in 2016. So this is shared in the Lawyers Daily, and I'm pulling pieces. "The World Health Organization defines elder abuse as a single or repeated act or lack of appropriate action occurring within any relationship where there is an expectation of trust that causes harm or distress to an older person. The UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities provides us with an underlying duty to protect these vulnerable people in care. Bill 218 may well add another denial, the right to enforce their own human rights. It was not that long ago that we experimented with human lives and we committed those with mental illness, allegedly, to secure facilities. No due process, no rights, and no humanity. This legacy and the intended wiping out of the memories of loved ones who have died because of the negligence of long-term care providers is surely unacceptable, to say the least. One would expect that our laws are there to promote and protect the well-being of our citizenry." He says that the Premier has suggested that Bill 218 will not shield negligent providers. The problem, of course, is that this is not what Bill 218 says. With its immunity provisions, this bill arguably bars actions alleging ordinary negligence. Negligent care with respect may not equate with being grossly negligent. With respect to what has happened in our long-term care facilities and the history of poor quality of care and even infection control procedures, there's a strong argument to be made that these tragedies could have been foreseeable, even though COVID-19 may not have been. Long-time deficiencies in these facilities have been documented. Those families affected by the deaths of ones they loved who were in long-term care facilities have the human right to expect accountability and to be able to find out how they died, and we have a responsibility to keep their memories alive. Speaker, it's really worth a read in its entirety, and I'm happy to share it with the Attorney General because it gets into the grit and specifics of the bill. and there is still time for this government to reverse course. And Speaker, while I have just a few seconds, I wanted to share just one quick quote from the comments. I say not to read the comments, but in a CBC article there are a couple comments, and one of them is, Rob Brewster says, those who write these bills may one day find themselves in said homes. I suggest you rethink your position, Gov. Thank you.
Further debate?